Della Reese's Detroit mansion sits empty today, its windows boarded up like closed eyes. The woman who once filled stadiums with her powerful voice and touched millions as an angel on TV died, leaving behind more than just memories. Inside her abandoned home lie clues to a shocking financial collapse that nobody saw coming. What really happened to Della's fortune? The making of a gospel legend. The sound of young Della Reese Patricia Early's voice could silence an entire congregation. Born in 1931 in Detroit's rough Black Bottom neighborhood, she entered a world where survival meant making tough choices every single day. Her mother, Nellie Mitchell, worked as a house cleaner for wealthy white families, scrubbing floors and washing dishes to keep food on their table. Money was so tight that some nights, little Della went to bed hungry. But even in poverty, something extraordinary was happening. At just 6 years old, Della discovered she had a gift that could move people to tears. When she opened her mouth to sing in the new Bethel Baptist Church, grown adults would weep openly. The congregation would dig deeper into their pockets, dropping extra coins into the collection plate after hearing her voice. Church leaders quickly realized this little girl could help bring in donations they desperately needed. Life got harder as Della grew older. When she was only 13, she made the heartbreaking decision to drop out of high school. Her family needed money, and education seemed like a luxury they couldn't afford. She took on multiple jobs, working in restaurants and cleaning offices, but music was always calling to her. Late at night, after everyone else was asleep, she would practice singing, dreaming of something bigger than the cramped apartment she shared with her mother. Detroit's music scene in the 1940s was harsh for a young black woman. White-owned venues would slam doors in her face. Record producers would listen for 30 seconds and send her away. But Della refused to give up. She sang wherever they would let her, from small church gatherings to neighborhood parties, slowly building a reputation in the black community. Everything changed when she turned 17. The legendary Mahalia Jackson, known as the Queen of Gospel, was putting together a touring group. Someone had told Jackson about the young girl from Detroit with the incredible voice. After one audition, Jackson knew she had found something special. She invited Della to join her tour, and suddenly, the girl who had been scrubbing floors was traveling across America, learning the music business from one of the greatest gospel singers who ever lived. Those tours with Jackson became Della's real education. She watched how Jackson commanded a stage, how she connected with audiences, and most importantly, how she handled the business side of music. Della began developing her own style, blending traditional gospel with jazz and blues influences that would later make her famous. By the early 1950s, record labels were finally paying attention, and Della Reese was about to become a name the whole country would know. Breaking barriers in show business. By the 1960s, Della Reese was ready to shock the music world by leaving gospel behind. Many people thought she was making a huge mistake. Gospel singers who crossed over to secular music often faced harsh criticism from religious communities, and some never recovered their careers. But Della had bigger dreams than staying in one corner of the music industry. Her first major breakthrough came when she signed with RCA Records and released Don't You Know in 1959. The song became a massive hit, reaching #2 on the Billboard charts and staying there for weeks. Suddenly, the gospel singer from Detroit was being played on mainstream radio stations across America. White audiences who had never heard of her were buying her records by the thousands. What made Della truly special was her voice's incredible range. She could sing a heartbreaking ballad that made people cry, then switch to an upbeat jazz number that got everyone dancing. Record executives quickly realized they had discovered someone who could handle any style of music. She recorded albums that mixed pop, jazz, blues, and even show tunes. Her collaborations with major artists like Duke Ellington and Count Basie proved she belonged in the top tier of American entertainers. Television opened doors that even hit records couldn't. In the 1960s and 70s, variety shows ruled the airwaves, and Della became a regular guest on programs like The Ed Sullivan Show and The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. But unlike other singers who just performed and left, Della stayed for the interviews. Her quick wit and warm personality made hosts want to bring her back again and again. Her own television shows followed, including Della in 1969, where she proved she could be more than just a singer. She interviewed celebrities, performed comedy sketches, and showed a natural ability to connect with viewers at home. Network executives started seeing her as a complete entertainer, not just someone with a great voice. Hollywood noticed too. Della began landing acting roles in both movies and television shows. She appeared in films like Psychic Killer and Harlem Nights, working alongside major stars and proving she could hold her own on the big screen. Her television appearances on shows like The Royal Family and Designing Women showed her comedic timing was just as impressive as her singing voice. By the 1970s and 80s, Della Reese had become exactly what she dreamed of as that hungry little girl in Detroit. She was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, headlining major venues, and had become a household name across America. She owned multiple properties and lived a lifestyle most people could only imagine. But her biggest role, and the one that would make her truly wealthy, was still waiting in the wings. Heavenly success and earthly riches. In 1994, at age 63, Della Reese landed the role that would transform her from a successful entertainer into a television icon. When producers offered her the part of Tess, the tough-love angel supervisor on Touched by an Angel, they had no idea they were creating one of the most beloved characters in television history. The show became a phenomenon that nobody saw coming. Every Sunday night, millions of families gathered around their televisions to watch Della's character guide newer angels and help people in crisis. Her catchphrase, "You have an assignment," became part of American culture. The show's mix of faith, hope, and family values struck a chord with audiences hungry for positive television programming. The money started flowing in like nothing Della had ever experienced. At the show's peak, she was earning over $100,000 per episode. With 24 episodes per season and the show running for 9 successful years, her television salary alone made her a millionaire several times over. But that was just the beginning of her financial windfall. Merchandise deals brought in additional hundreds of thousands of dollars. Angel figurines, inspirational books, music albums, and other products bearing her image generated massive royalty checks. Personal appearance fees skyrocketed as churches, conferences, and corporate events competed to book the famous angel. She was commanding $50,000 or more for a single speaking engagement. Della's lifestyle transformed to match her newfound wealth. She owned multiple properties, including her magnificent Detroit mansion and a luxurious California home. Her garage housed expensive cars, including a Rolls-Royce and several luxury sedans. She wore designer clothing and expensive jewelry to premieres and award shows, living like the star she had always dreamed of becoming. Her business investments seemed to multiply her wealth even further. She owned restaurants, invested in real estate deals across the country, and started her own gospel music production company. Every venture she touched appeared to turn to gold. Financial advisors told her she was worth between $8 and $10 million at her peak, making her one of the wealthiest African-American entertainers of her generation. Despite her incredible wealth, Della maintained the down-to-earth personality that made her so beloved. She continued attending the same Detroit church where she first discovered her voice as a child. She supported numerous charities and helped family members buy homes and start businesses. To the public, she seemed to have achieved the perfect balance between earthly success and spiritual values. Her Detroit mansion became a symbol of everything she had accomplished. The massive Tudor-style estate in Palmer Woods was where she entertained fellow celebrities, hosted charity events, and lived like the queen she had become. But behind the golden gates of that beautiful mansion, cracks were already starting to form that would eventually bring everything crashing down. When angels fall from grace. The first warning signs appeared during the final seasons of Touched by an Angel, when Della began struggling with health problems that would quietly drain her fortune for years to come. Diabetes started affecting her energy levels, making the long television shooting days increasingly difficult. She tried to hide her fatigue from producers and co-stars, but those closest to her noticed she wasn't the same powerhouse performer who could work 18-hour days without breaking a sweat. Behind the scenes, despite earning millions from the show, Della's expenses were growing faster than her income. The Detroit mansion alone cost thousands of dollars monthly to maintain. Property taxes, Utilities, staff salaries, and constant repairs ate into her earnings at an alarming rate. She had invested in several business ventures that looked promising on paper but were actually losing money quietly in the background. Her generous heart became her financial weakness. Della was supporting multiple family members, paying mortgages for relatives, funding college educations, and covering medical bills for friends who couldn't afford treatment. Church organizations regularly came to her for donations, and she rarely said no. What seemed like acts of kindness were creating ongoing financial obligations that she couldn't easily escape. When Touched by an Angel ended its 9-year run in 2003, the harsh reality of Hollywood hit Della hard. At 72 years old, she discovered that leading roles for older actresses were extremely rare. The steady income that had made her wealthy was gone, replaced by occasional guest appearances and speaking engagements that paid much less than her television salary. The entertainment industry had moved on to younger faces and different types of programming. Reality television and edgy dramas were replacing the wholesome family shows that had made Della famous. Producers who once competed for her attention were no longer returning phone calls from her agents. Neighbors in the upscale Palmer Woods area began noticing subtle changes at Della's mansion. The landscaping that had always been perfectly maintained started looking a bit overgrown. Windows that once gleamed began showing streaks and spots. Staff members who had worked at the house for years quietly disappeared, not replaced when they left. The mansion's famous parties and charity events became less frequent. Friends who had regularly visited noticed that some rooms seemed closed off, and expensive artwork that had decorated the walls appeared to be missing. When asked about these changes, Della would smile and change the subject, maintaining the positive attitude that had made her beloved by millions. Medical bills were piling up as her diabetes required more expensive treatments and regular doctor visits. The combination of declining income and increasing expenses created a dangerous financial spiral that even someone with millions in the bank couldn't sustain indefinitely. What had started as small cracks in Della's seemingly perfect life were about to become devastating breaks that would threaten everything she had worked so hard to build. Inside the house that faith built, the 8,000-square-foot Tudor-style mansion in Detroit's Palmer Woods neighborhood stood as a monument to everything Della Reese had accomplished, but it was also slowly becoming her financial downfall. Built in the 1920s, the grand estate featured soaring ceilings, intricate woodwork, and enough rooms to house a small hotel. When Della bought it at the height of her television success, she saw it as the perfect symbol of how far she had traveled from that cramped apartment in Black Bottom. Walking through the mansion's front doors was like entering a gospel music museum. Custom stained glass windows depicted biblical scenes, while the walls displayed gold and platinum records from her decades-long career. The main living room featured a massive grand piano where Della had entertained fellow celebrities and religious leaders. Her personal recording studio, complete with professional sound equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, occupied an entire wing of the house. The kitchen could have served a restaurant, with commercial-grade appliances and enough space to prepare meals for hundreds of guests. Della's library contained thousands of religious books, first-edition Bibles, and personal letters from fans around the world. Each room told a different story of her incredible journey from poverty to stardom. But maintaining this palace was costing Della a fortune she no longer had. Property taxes alone ran into tens of thousands of dollars annually. Heating and cooling the massive structure cost thousands monthly, especially during Detroit's brutal winters. The staff needed to properly maintain the grounds, clean the numerous rooms, and handle security added up to enormous monthly expenses that never stopped coming. Rumors began circulating about mysterious features hidden throughout the mansion. Neighbors whispered about a private chapel where Della held prayer meetings, secret rooms containing valuable artwork, and safes filled with cash and jewelry. Some claimed there were hidden passages connecting different parts of the house, built during Prohibition, when the mansion's original owners needed to hide illegal activities. Personal documents scattered throughout the house reportedly revealed the shocking truth about Della's financial situation. Bank statements, unpaid bills, and legal notices painted a picture very different from the wealthy celebrity image she maintained in public. Financial advisors had apparently warned her repeatedly about her spending, but the papers suggested she either ignored their advice or simply couldn't bring herself to downsize her generous lifestyle. Palmer Wood's neighbors started noticing troubling changes they had never seen before. The immaculate landscaping that had once made the property a neighborhood showcase began looking wild and overgrown. Broken windows went months without repair. The circular driveway developed potholes that weren't filled. Paint peeled from window frames that had always been perfectly maintained. Most disturbing of all, lights that had once warmly illuminated the mansion every evening began staying dark for days at a time, giving the once magnificent home an eerie, abandoned feeling that made longtime residents uncomfortable. The house that Faith had built was slowly crumbling, and with it, the financial foundation of Della's entire life was beginning to collapse. The Gospel Queen's money troubles. The letters from the Internal Revenue Service started arriving in 2010, and they contained news that would have shocked Della's millions of fans. The woman who had played an angel on television owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid federal and state taxes. Years of poor financial management, missed payments, had created a debt spiral that seemed impossible to escape. Creditors who had once competed for Della's business were now pursuing legal action to collect what she owed them. Credit card companies, medical providers, and business partners filed lawsuits demanding immediate payment. Court documents revealed the shocking truth that her once massive fortune had largely disappeared through a combination of overspending, failed investments, and the enormous costs of maintaining her lavish lifestyle. Desperate to keep her beloved Detroit mansion, Della made a decision that would trap her in an even deeper financial hole. She took out a reverse mortgage against the property, borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars against its value. While this provided temporary relief, it also meant she was essentially selling her home to herself, creating a debt that would grow larger every month with interest and fees. Medical bills were consuming whatever money she had left. Diabetes treatment required expensive medications, regular doctor visits, and specialized care that insurance didn't fully cover. Heart problems that developed as she aged brought additional costs for cardiologists, tests, and treatments. The woman who had once spent thousands on designer clothing was now struggling to pay for basic health care. The financial pressure created painful tensions within her family. Relatives who had depended on Della's generosity for years suddenly found themselves cut off from financial support. Some family members began fighting over who should control her affairs, leading to legal battles that cost even more money in attorney fees. The woman who had always been the family's provider was now forced to ask for help, creating uncomfortable role reversals that strained relationships. Close friends watched in horror as Della tried to maintain her dignity while her world collapsed around her. She continued making public appearances and giving interviews, always presenting the positive attitude that had made her famous. But those who knew her best could see the stress taking its toll on her health and spirit. Financial experts who later examined her situation estimated that by her final years, Della's net worth had fallen to less than $500,000. This represented a staggering decline from the $8 to $10 million she had been worth at her peak. Decades of success in music, television, and entertainment had been reduced to a fraction of what it once was. The mansion that had once symbolized her incredible achievements was now a financial anchor dragging her deeper into debt with every passing month. As her health continued to decline, Della faced the heartbreaking reality that she might lose everything she had worked so hard to build. A legend's last breath. By 2015, Della Reese had become a prisoner in her own home, spending most days confined to a few rooms while her once magnificent Detroit mansion deteriorated around her. The woman who had once commanded stages across America could barely walk from her bedroom to the kitchen without assistance. Diabetes had stolen her energy. Heart problems made simple tasks exhausting, and the financial stress of losing everything had broken her spirit in ways that decades of poverty never could. Her daily routine had shrunk to managing medications, doctor appointments, and the painful reality of watching creditors slowly take apart the life she had built. The recording studio where she had once created beautiful music sat silent and dusty. The The grand piano that had entertained countless guests was covered with unpaid bills and legal documents. The mansion that had once hosted glamorous parties now felt like a tomb filled with memories of better times. On November 17, 2017, Della's long battle finally came to an end. She passed away peacefully at age 86 in her California home, far from the Detroit mansion that had defined her success and ultimately contributed to her downfall. The irony wasn't lost on those who knew her story that she died not in the palace she had built, but in a much smaller, simpler place. The official cause of death was complications from diabetes and heart failure, conditions that had been slowly destroying her body for over a decade. The diseases that had drained her finances were the same ones that eventually claimed her life. Her final years had been a cruel cycle of medical treatments that she could barely afford, each intervention buying her a little more time while pushing her deeper into debt. Her husband, Franklin Lett, and her children faced the heartbreaking task of mourning their beloved wife and mother, while simultaneously dealing with the financial chaos she left behind. Estate lawyers delivered the shocking news that there was virtually nothing left to inherit except debt and legal problems. The family had to make the painful decision to walk away from the Detroit mansion rather than continue fighting a financial battle they couldn't win. The public response to Della's death was an outpouring of love and respect that would have touched her deeply. Fellow entertainers shared stories of her kindness and professionalism. Religious leaders praised her spiritual influence on millions of people. Fans around the world posted tributes on social media, sharing how her role as Tess the Angel had helped them through difficult times in their own lives. Roma Downey, her co-star from Touched by an Angel, spoke for many when she said that Della had been a real angel to everyone who knew her. The entertainment industry had lost not just a talented performer, but a woman whose faith and positivity had made the world a better place. But even as the world celebrated her life and legacy, one haunting question remained unanswered. What would happen to the empty mansion she left behind? What remains in the empty rooms? Within weeks of Della's death, her magnificent Detroit mansion became a haunting symbol of how quickly fame and fortune can vanish. The family, overwhelmed by legal battles and financial obligations they couldn't afford to fight, simply walked away from the property. The 8,000-square-foot Tudor estate now sits empty in Palmer Woods, its windows dark and lifeless, like closed eyes on a once beautiful face. Nature began reclaiming the property almost immediately. Without professional landscaping, the manicured gardens that had once been neighborhood showcases turned into overgrown jungles. Weeds pushed through cracks in the circular driveway. Tree branches, no longer trimmed, started scraping against the mansion's roof during storms. Several windows have been broken by falling debris or possibly vandals, and nobody has bothered to repair them. The abandoned celebrity mansion has become a serious problem for the Palmer Woods community. Property values in the upscale neighborhood have dropped as potential buyers worry about living next to what locals now call the ghost house. Neighbors complain about increased crime, with reports of people jumping the fence to explore the empty property or steal anything of value they can find. What makes the situation even more mysterious are the rumors about what might still be inside those empty rooms. Local residents whisper about valuable recording equipment left behind in Della's personal studio, gospel memorabilia that could be worth thousands, and personal belongings that her family either couldn't afford to move or simply abandoned in their grief. Some claim to have seen lights flickering in the windows late at night, though that could be nothing more than reflections or overactive imaginations. Security footage from neighboring homes has reportedly captured shadowy figures moving around the property after dark. Whether these are vandals, urban explorers, or something more supernatural depends on who's telling the story. The mansion's reputation has grown more eerie with each passing month of abandonment. Legal experts say the property is trapped in a complex web of estate issues, unpaid taxes, and creditor claims that could take years to resolve. The reverse mortgage Della took out means the bank technically owns much of the property's value, but they're reluctant to invest money in maintenance when the legal ownership remains unclear. Several potential buyers have expressed interest in purchasing the mansion, but the financial and legal complications have scared most away. Some developers have suggested demolishing the historic home and building new construction, which has horrified preservation groups who believe the property represents an important piece of Detroit's cultural history. City officials are growing concerned about the safety hazards posed by the deteriorating structure. Broken windows could injure curious trespassers, and the building's aging systems could create fire or environmental dangers for the surrounding neighborhood. As the mansion continues its slow decline into ruin, it serves as a sobering reminder of how even the most successful lives can end in tragedy and abandonment. Lessons from a life of faith and fame. Della Reese's tragic financial collapse serves as one of entertainment history's most sobering cautionary tales about how even beloved, successful celebrities can lose everything through a combination of poor planning and unfortunate circumstances. Her story reveals the dangerous assumption that many stars make, that the money will keep flowing forever, and that peak earning years will last indefinitely. The entertainment industry has taken notice of what happened to Della, using her experience as a teaching moment for younger performers. Financial advisors now regularly warn clients about the specific mistakes that destroyed her wealth. Overspending during peak earning years, taking on too many financial obligations to family and friends, failing to plan for healthcare costs in old age, and not preparing for the reality that careers inevitably decline. Estate planning experts point to Della's story as a perfect example of why celebrities need specialized financial guidance. The reverse mortgage that was supposed to save her home actually accelerated her financial destruction. Her generous support of family members created ongoing obligations she couldn't sustain when her income dropped. These are mistakes that proper planning could have prevented. Yet, despite losing her fortune and dying in financial ruin, Della's spiritual and artistic legacy remains untouchable. Touched by an Angel continues to air in reruns around the world, bringing comfort to new generations of viewers who discover her character's message of hope and faith. Her gospel recordings still inspire worshipers in churches across America. Her influence on other performers, especially African-American women in entertainment, continues to open doors decades after her career peak. Social media tributes posted years after her death show that people remember Della not for her mansion or her money, but for how her performances made them feel. Cancer patients write about how Tess the Angel gave them strength during treatment. Parents share stories of watching the show with their children and using Della's character to teach lessons about kindness and faith. The abandoned Detroit mansion has become an unintentional symbol of her complex legacy. The empty, deteriorating building represents the temporary nature of material success and the danger of assuming that wealth equals security. But it also stands as a reminder that physical possessions fade, while artistic contributions can last forever. Della's story forces us to ask difficult questions about success and meaning. Is a life successful if it brings joy to millions but ends in financial failure? Can someone who loses everything still be considered wealthy if their work continues to inspire people decades later? Perhaps the most powerful lesson from Della Reese's life is that there are two kinds of legacies: the material wealth that can disappear overnight and the impact on human hearts that lasts forever. The mansion may crumble, but somewhere tonight, someone struggling with life's challenges will watch a rerun of Touched by an Angel and find exactly the hope they needed. In the end, maybe that's the kind of wealth that really matters.